All right, joining me on the final word today is a man who played 11 test matches and 49 white ball games for South Africa, a test bowling average of better than 23, and gone on to take 437 wickets for Hampshire at an absurd average of 19.9. With 28 five-wicket hauls, he's a county machine. Of course, it's none other than Hampshire's Kyle Abbott. Great to have you on the program.
How's it, Adam? Thanks for having me. It's a real privilege, actually, to be on here. There's so many people that listen to this podcast, and that. So when I got the opportunity, I kind of jumped at it. So thanks for having me.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say. I know that your wife listens to us as well, which is kind of cool that you can do an interview that she will subsequently, hopefully, listen to.
Yeah, fellow Australians, this is certainly going to get me a few brownie points, I hope. But no, she was ecstatic when I told her. So yeah, hopefully it's a good one.
Look, you've started this season. We'll start where we are at the moment, right? Hampshire, you're in a classic county cricket hotel night before a game kind of energy at the moment. You're playing Nottinghamshire. They're top of the table. You theoretically could be towards the top if you knock them off this week, which means there's so much riding on it. But I suppose these are circumstances that you know very well, having played for so long in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly in the middle of a grind. We were quite lucky to get a week off last week, but we've got a big block of 4 games coming up now in May, and it's still kind of at the point where everyone's sparring each other and just kind of having a look at what's happening. And by the end of this block coming up, there's certainly going to be a split in that Div 1 table. It always happens. It's just kind of how early it happens in the season, but normally after these first couple of rounds, there's quite a distinct split where you start looking up or looking down in some cases, as we have in the past. So yeah, as you said, it's another week for us against the good Knot side here at Trent Bridge. It's a lovely place to play. Although Hampshire have had quite a bit of success, not only here, but also against them in the past. So we're looking forward to it. And getting back after playing after a couple of weeks off is nice.
And I'm not even entirely sure if he's playing or not. Given this interview's going out in a few days, this might sound a daft question, but is your old mate Mohammed Abbas playing for the other team?
He most certainly is. He arrived over the weekend. I had a chat with him. He's safely here. So so he's certainly going to be revved up for this game. But yeah, it'll be good to see him. Obviously, having partnered him over the last couple of years was an absolute privilege. I learned so much from him. To be a subcontinent seamer, and his success not only in the UK but particularly in the subcontinent is phenomenal, and a brilliant guy and an outstanding bowler.
It's a little bit like If Not for Surrey, right? Like when you two were leading that attack, consistently finishing second, came home with the wet sail last year as well. You've been so close without quite getting there. Does that provide a sense of mounting expectation around the dressing rooms at Southampton that whilst you're still there, I know you're 37 now, but still doing a great job leading the attack, that this window remains open, but it sort of might not be open for a hugely long time with you and others who have been at the peak of your powers?
Yeah, absolutely. We were certainly in some really good positions over the last couple of years to win it. I think I go back to 2001. Liam Dawson and I were actually talking about it on the bus today. Some of the most memorable games that we've been involved in was actually one that we lost up in Liverpool to Lancs, who thought they were going to beating us. They were going to win the league, but if we beat them, we would win the league by 1 point, and they were 9 down, and Mason Crane was spinning it past every edge possible, and we just couldn't get the wicket. And I think Dane Villas ended up hitting the winning run after we had actually dropped him earlier in the afternoon. So we've certainly had it there. We've certainly had it presented to us a few times, but as you well know, that Surrey team is quite formidable. They're incredibly powerful. They've got a lot of depth and have been deserved winners over the last couple of years. And we have let ourselves down here and there, especially away at the Oval. Feel like we kind of redeemed ourselves a little bit there this year. We felt like we played a solid game. Although if we look at it fairly, they did have the upper hand for most of those 4 days, but we showed enough on that last day to bat out, where hopefully that can take us forward. And yeah, as I said, that once the season starts to kick in now, especially into May, and then the gap with white ball cricket, and then everything seems to speed up quite a bit in September. But it's certainly still there. I feel like our attack this year is a bit more diverse than we've had in the past, with likes of Sonny Baker. Brad Wheels come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of months, which is really exciting. And the few other guys in the wings, John Turner, James Fuller, and obviously Liam Dawson as our sort of banker. And it's certainly there, and that's something we're pushing for. But the expectation, what's the worst that can happen? We'll finish second again. We just got to take it deep. We've got to take it into September and be there and thereabouts, and anything can happen there.
I was going to ask you about Sonny Baker. You talk about that mentoring process or working collaboratively with Mohammed Abbas over multiple seasons. And I guess for him, Sonny Baker on the way through, he'd see you in a similar way. I watched him bowl in that match at the Oval, and it just feels to me like he's got something special about him. Keen for your thoughts on this raw talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Two very different bowlers, myself, him, and Mohammed Abbas, and I didn't expect him to ask so many questions, seeming as because we were so different. But he's been a sponge. His ears are open, and he just wants to talk, and he wants to learn, and it's been great. And unfortunately, had to take a rest due to ECB reasons, which really put him back. It's something I personally don't agree with. I think young bowlers need to bowl. They need to get stronger, and they need to learn to bowl long spells and spend time in the field. It's the only way I personally think that you can get fitter and stronger. And taking those rests, often coming back, is more vulnerable and susceptible to injuries. So you speak to a lot of the old county bowlers, and stopping was the worst thing. They kept bowling. They kept ticking over week in and week out. They said once that body gets going, it's got to keep going. So I really hope that he is looked after, but looked after in the right way, where he is allowed to play his cricket, to learn, to bowl, understand his limitations, understand his capabilities and his skill. And the only time you're going to learn that is by playing, and by playing with guys with experience, which he has got around him. But a really good talent, and he can bowl some serious pace, and that's probably something we've been lacking in our attack over the last couple of years. So it's great to have him around, and he can certainly change games, and a force with the tail. Sort of compare guys bowling 90 mile an hour plus to the tail as good as a mystery spinner. That can really speed up with sort of 8, 9, 10, 11 if you've got someone like him tearing in.
Interesting how that dovetails. Like what we tend to do on this interview is go back to the start, and with you, a big part of your cricketing upbringing is being, schooled in, where you were brought up. I said, was the boarding school you were at in Durban or near Durban? And give us a sense. I hear those. I see that in your biography about. I immediately think that must have been tough stuff. A boarding school in South Africa. That couldn't have been the sort of place where you took weeks off and were rested. I'm tipping that whether it was in cricket or in broader life, that would have been the type of place where you grew up pretty quickly.
Yeah. I take you back. So answer your first question. Yes, the boarding school was just outside of Durban, up on Bothers Hill, called Kersney College. But I was actually born, and I grew up sort of 2.5 hours away from Durban, in the middle of sugarcane fields and wild bush. Actually, where my parents are living at the moment, where we've had a house for over 25 years now. There's hippos roaming back through their back garden and whatnot. So it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. But I wasn't at one of the toughest boarding schools in South Africa, but just the way that South Africans were brought up playing cricket, I think is a true test to the way that we bowl and the longevity in South African bowlers, and why they keep producing. Is I always go back to not even a story, but a situation I tell guys. At under 13, So back a long time now. We were chosen for our representative counties. So I was playing for Natal as I would play for Hampshire. And we went away to a national week at the end of the year in December. It was actually the first time that I met guys like Dean Elgar and all these other guys sort of my age that are still playing. And we played 5 days of 50 over cricket back to back with no rest in between at the age of 13. And you did that again at under 15, and you did that again at under 19. And if you were lucky enough to get selected for South African schools, you played on the 6th day. So it was constant, and that's kind of how we grew up. There was no sort of escape from it. No one gave us an option to do anything else. That's just what it was. Who knows if it was the right thing or the wrong thing? I have my own view on that. But then even growing, then getting into Natal and that under Graham Ford, under Lance Klusener, it was your job is 20 to 25 overs a day. Make sure you're fit for it. Bottom line. Like, there were no arguments. There's no grey area. You're a bowler. That's your job. Prepare for it. Run, train, bowl. We're incredibly lucky in Natal. Our winters are beautiful, so we can train outside pretty much the whole winter, and we'd have a couple of months off. But we were bowling 18 to 20 overs a week to targets, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and that was our winter up until October when we started. We just bowled overs and bowled overs and bowled overs, which I think has really put me in good stead to still be playing at the age of 37, turning 38 pretty soon. That groundwork was done way back in youth stages. That just trained the body. The body got used to it, understood the aches and pains, and just got on with it.
It sounds like the perfect preparation for, a block of 8 county games in 9 weeks or 7, whatever it works out to be in April and May. Hey, you mentioned Lance Klusener being from the same part of South Africa as you, famously so in his case, Zulu and so on. I mean, were you the kind of kid who was obsessed with cricket and therefore you mentioned 12, 13, under 13s, probably around the time of the 99 World Cup when Lance Klusener was player of the tournament. Was that an influential moment in your young cricketing life?
I remember that night clearly. I can remember my mom asking, she's like, "Will you go do your homework?" And I was like, "Just hold on, this I've got to watch this." And I just remember like the devastation of that whole run out and everything. I can remember it clearly. I knew he was from our area and that, and I always looked up to him. And I think the way he went about it, nothing was pretty, but he got the job done. And later on, when I was fortunate enough to play in a team with him as Zulu's head coach, I just connected with him where it ripped straight back to basics of just getting dirty and getting the job done. And sometimes that's what you got to do in cricket. And I think maybe everyone's a little bit guilty of how it looks and is it going to go on social media or whatever. And I mean, who knows? But at the end of the day, we're here to win games of cricket, and sometimes it doesn't matter. And putting in those hard yards to get those results is sometimes lost a little bit, maybe through impatience. I'm not sure, or just not willing to. But that's one thing he really kind of drilled into me. Was a lot of discipline and just getting the job done.
Do you still detect that, like, as a senior player? This might sound a bit patronising to our England listeners and indeed your England teammates, but you sort of, as a South African, you feel that comparative advantage that, Saffers who come out here are hard bastards. They just are. They all are. And you just kind of still feel that when you're playing in a competition over here that, if push comes to shove, you'll be the last man standing. Do you kind of feel that energy even now deep into your career, where you're far more a craftsman and you're relying on your skill and your temperament, that there's something about that South African upbringing and disposition that still serves you well in the heat of battle?
I think to a degree, but I also think it's a little bit of a generational change. I mean, you look back and there's been some hard English cricketers. There's been hard Aussie cricketers. There's Indian cricketers. Like they are. Like I think it definitely is. Maybe not just specifically to South Africa, but I have probably found a change in the generation gap sort of coming through now, especially with T20 cricket. I feel like there's more excuses and more cop-outs when it comes to kind of what the end result is. Phrases of, "Oh, that's the way I play," or "That's my brand," and that's the way it's going, and I find that quite hard, not to accept, but to use as an excuse. There's still fundamentals to cricket that are going to be there till the day we die, and have been there since the very first ball was bowled. That's hard work. That's discipline. Valuing your wicket. It's being relentless when you bowl. Executing plans both with bat and ball. There's just fundamentals that I think are non-negotiables in cricket that the sort of the younger generation are kind of finding excuses for here and there, and are coming a bit unstuck.
Maybe it sounds like the grounding you had meant that when you get into the Dolphins at a relatively young age and you get onto that South African pathway and start posting relatively big numbers right away with the ball, you would have had these role models to look up to as well. And was there belief early on when you were coming through as an early domestic player that, I've got the chops to really go on and have a massive career? Was there always that self-belief with you? Are you one of those kind of guys, or did you kind of doubt it until you were doing it?
I never really looked too far ahead. So I'll go back. I kind of got lost a little bit after school. My first 3 years after school, I came over and I played club cricket. I wasn't in any academy or anything in South Africa. I was never chosen. So I thought, well, I'll come give it a break, play a bit of club cricket in the UK. And then it was the back end October or so of 2008 where I was actually applying for university for the following year. And thank goodness, the next phone call I got from Graham Ford, which I hadn't spoken to Graham Ford for almost 3 years or so since I left school. He had coached me a little bit at school. And he was the current coach at the Dolphins and asked if I'd become a net bowler.
Right.
Can you come be a net bowler? And I was like, 40 I can. He's said, I'm 2 hours away from where you guys train, but you know what, I'll make it. And I went down and I stayed with a mate. It was a 2-bedroom flat and I was sleeping in the lounge. And I went into bowl every day. And that was October, November, December, January, almost 4 months of being a net bowler and just kind of being around and around and around. And then I think it was about end of January of 2009, early February, got 2 games for the second team, the Dolphins second team. Did all right, and then got picked to play for the Dolphins in February. Took 5 on debut. Got a contract in March, April, and never looked back. Never went to university. And I was always one. I asked the questions of, right, how can I? So if I was a net bowler when I was a net bowler, for example, I was like, what can I do to play in the Dolphins second team? Oh, maybe just hang around a bit more. You might get an opportunity, get the opportunity. Right, now I'm playing there. Like, how do I get out of the second team? How do I get to the Dolphins? And then when I got to the Dolphins, I was like, how do I get to South Africa? And I just kind of kept asking those questions and just keeping things quite short-sighted. I never got too ahead of myself. Because I don't think I have worlds of talent. I think I've got a few small things that I do well. and I've concentrated on those over the years, and I know I can do those couple of things well, and I haven't tried to get out of my bubble or kind of just get too ahead of myself. I've kept it very simple, very narrow, and quite short-sighted into the future.
I mean, to say the least, in terms of what you do. Well, you absolutely bang the door down, though, to get to the national team in 2012-13 when you take more than 50 domestic wickets. I think when you include what you initially do in the test team, and we'll come to that in a sec, it was 65 at 14. I mean, you made an irrefutable case to be picked for South Africa, and then it happens. And you talk about a fifer on Dolphins debut. I mean, how about 7 for 29 in your first test innings? It's the stuff of fairy tales, right? I mean, take us back there. Take us to Centurion. You're playing against a strong Pakistan team, and you just run amok and finish with the 9th best figures ever for a man on test debut.
Yeah, quite. I still get goosebumps now, kind of thinking about it. And I remember we batted first, and we'd managed to bat the whole day. And the following day, wicket fell early on in the second session. I was in the first session I was in next, and the Centurion stairs are really steep and really long. They go down, and I'm walking down, and I know my parents and all my family are sitting to the left, and all I want to do is look at them and just get like some reassurance that everything's going to be all right. But like I knew I couldn't. So yeah, that kind of settled me a little bit. Kind of that first day, not actually being involved, actually just watching the guys bat, because now I'm in a team of Hashim Amla, A.B. de Villiers, Graham Smith. You talk about a strong leader across things and not kind of accepting any sort of mediocrity or excuses. Graham Smith was sort of the pinnacle of that. Incredible to play under, and I was fortunate enough to play kind of the next year or so under him. But the night. Oh, sorry, I'll jump back. The night before the first, before that, when I was told I was playing, I actually phoned Lance Klusner because I thought to myself, listen, I need to speak to someone. I need to get something from someone about tomorrow. So, and no joke, this is kind of almost word for word. I think our conversation lasted around 20 to 25 seconds, where thank goodness he picked up, which is a rarity sometimes. But I said, how's it all? How are you? He goes, no, I'm good. I think they were in Cape Town for a game, whatnot. And I said, listen, I just want to let you know I'm making my debut tomorrow. He goes, oh, and that's awesome. Congratulations. I said, yeah, thank you very much. He said, yeah, all right. So keep it tidy out there, and I'll chat to you tomorrow. And I said, all right, cheers. And that was it. And I sat on the edge of my bed, and I thought to myself, what is he's given me is keep it tidy. And lucky I've by now played under him for a couple of years and know him as a person. And there's no gray area with Zulu. Our relationship in particular, he's always told me good things and bad things. Like he's come hard on me when he's needed to. He's complimented me when he's needed to. But we just had this great understanding. And I thought to myself, you know what? Out of all the chats and that we've had over the years, if he's got nothing more to say to me now, he thinks I'm ready, and that's all I needed. It didn't make any difference when I bowled my first ball that I can't even remember or feel. That was a half volley down leg side, and Ali whipped it for 4. Didn't help then, but as it went on, I was like, right, I can. That one's out the way, and then just kind of got into my business. And I was lucky enough to be in that attack. I think it was definitely Vernon definitely played. Dale played. I think Rory Kleinfeld might have been the fourth seamer. So to be around those guys was incredible. But I just tried to kind of do my own thing, but my own thing was very similar to what they do. Vernon bowls dead straight. Dale also kind of off stump, hammering off stump, obviously with greater pace. And I was just like, I can't let these guys down. They bowled an awesome opening spell. I need to follow, and I need to be straight on it. And yeah, it was just one of those days where edges went to hand, LBs were given out, and it was incredible. I don't think I could have scripted it any better, and to have all the family there, and that was incredibly special.
Yeah, a moment that will be with you forever, right? No matter what, that's no one can take it away from you. 7 for 29 on Test debut, and you rattle off those names. That's who you're competing with as well, right? Like Stain, Morkel, Philander, as a starting point. 3 of the greatest seamers that South Africa have produced since reunification. Probably why bother with the caveat? 3 of the best the country's ever had, full stop. And knowing that, I guess there's competitive tension, but that contributes to the scarcity of opportunities for you, right? 11 Test matches across your Test career doesn't really tally with 7 for on debut, but it's a tricky journey, right? I mean, it's not an easy one for you when you've got so many other fast bowlers who are there vying for the same spots.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the wrong timing, I guess, for me in life, but also like what an opportunity. Like I still got to play at the highest level. 11 more Test matches than I ever thought as a kid. Even at a point of playing for the Dolphins, it was kind of, it was there, but I saw those guys ahead of me, and it was kind of never maybe a reality in my head, until it did happen after a decent season. But the amount I learned from them, getting to play with them, you break down those. I tried and break down those kind of 11 tests into, they're 11 tests and wasn't, but like, you go, right, I got to play in Graham Smith's last Test as a captain. He won it. I think it was like his 52nd winning Test as captain or something stupid. I was involved in that game. After that Pakistan series, we got the mace. We were Test number 1. Played 2 Tests in Australia. We won the series. Played in India. Took 5 in India. So you break it down into smaller ones, and I see it that way. And I was like, the games that I was fortunate enough to play in were incredible. It wasn't just 11 games and it was a random one here, a random one there. Yes, they were, but in my mind, and they were quite significant and unique in their own way.
Yeah, and we'll get to a couple of those in a moment. I think it's probably the right time to fold in the 2015 World Cup in all of this as well, because you ended up inadvertently getting thrown in the middle of what, the best way to describe as a bit of a political storm, didn't you? 2015 World Cup, to recap, semi-final. You'd had a good tournament. Vernon Philander was injured. He was available for the semi, and he was brought back in. But the way it was reported at the time was that it was more than simply that. It was to do with the transformation targets. And you fell foul of that being a white player in the team. I mean, that must have been incredibly challenging for you to manage the emotions around that, knowing that there was so much at stake in a World Cup semi-final. And we weren't talking about any old bowler either, are we? We're talking about Vernon Philander. There are layers of complexity here. Yeah,
I think that's the best way to describe it. It is so complex, and I don't think there's anyone outside of South Africa, or if you haven't been involved in South African sport, or to know just how complex and how deep these kind of things run. And there's so much out of your control as a player. And that's a perfect scenario there. It was, it was disappointing. I think that the thing that was probably the saddest, where I thought I was okay for that semi-final. over the years, you pick up coaches' body language and that towards you, and you get a pretty good idea a couple of days before a game if you're going to play or not. And it's normally they don't talk to you, and it happened from very early on, and it's just the way it is. And I remember training the day before that Friday. I think it was a Friday. We'd just beaten Sri Lanka in the quarterfinal. I remember training that day. It was a bit wet and a bit cold in Auckland, but we still managed to train. And Russell Domingo didn't say a word to me that whole day, not around that training or anything. And in the back of my mind, the experience of the past started to kind of come back. But I was like, no, it can't be. Like we're in such a sweet spot. You can't change a team now. When you're running like this and you got momentum after a quarterfinal and coming up against a very good, very, very good New Zealand team in their own backyard. I just thought to myself it would be silly to change anything. Not only from that, but batters who were maybe slightly out of form, but they were going to come right, but that wasn't the point. Like you got the momentum, and I think our team meetings were normally around about 6:00 in the evening, and we're in the team room playing pool and table tennis and all sorts that they've got set up for us in there. And I remember kind of got to about 6:15 or so, and everyone's like, "What's going on? Like, where's Russell? Where's the coaching staff? Yeah, everything and whatnot." And then Russell walked in and called me outside. And as he did that, I was like, oh, no. Yeah, that was, and then we sat down on the couch outside, and he told me, listen, you're not going to play. And yeah, that was really tough. It took me quite a while to go back inside. I actually said to him, I'm not going back in. I said, you go, you carry on. He said, you have to come back in. I said, I'm not. I said, I'm sorry. I'm sitting out here. He goes, well, I'm going to wait for you until you come back in. So yeah, eventually did. And yeah, it was like it was a weird feeling in the team after that. And yeah, I think the other really sad thing that came out of that was Vernon was made to be the villain. And him and I spoke a lot after that. We've still got a really good relationship. We've never had a bad relationship, which it actually came out in the press and was made to look like we had. And he was made to be the fall guy, and I found that incredibly tough to take, and just to how people could actually say that, where it was not his fault. It was far deeper. It was far more complex than that. Then we got enough time to talk about on any amount of podcasts.
And I absolutely get that. I'm just sort of mindful that, like, you're born in 87? Is that when you're born?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So you're a little boy very little boy when Mandela's released from prison. I know you're a great admirer of Nelson Mandela. You probably remember the elections, right? 94, the famous elections, which the Australian team were in South Africa at the time. Like, your childhood is in some ways defined by this process that South Africa is going through post-apartheid. Like, you're a child of apartheid, for want of a better description, at the very end of it anyway. So that this is all in the mix here, right? How do you feel, like, reflecting on that now, with many years hindsight, 10 years hindsight, that, like, this whole, yes, you're in the middle of it at the 2015 World Cup, but in some ways you've been in the middle of it your whole life, because you go back to when you're a kid and you've seen firsthand growing up as this country's evolved and changed. It must be from an interesting vantage point that you come at this from. Yeah.
I mean, everything you say there is spot on. And I think that's one thing. It certainly has, it's given me quite a thick skin. And made me a bit more resilient, and had a little bit more, for the better use of the word, a little bit more dog fuck. Sometimes I don't really get verbal or anything, but in my head, I'm so in a fight that I'm not going to stop. And that's certainly through all the country's imperfections, and that's certainly kind of one thing that it does breed is some real hard fighters, because we've just had to. We've had to look over our shoulders continuously because there's someone else pushing you, because there are only 4 or 5 places available to play in a team, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, to take a positive out of it from a personal side, it's certainly been something that is used to kind of get the better out of people. But you know what happened apartheid times was wrong. There's no argument about that. And the way Cricket South Africa are going about the transformation is understandable. I don't think there's any arguments about that. I just feel the way they've gone about it, they could have done a bit better. Asking players to play international cricket with very little first class or very little cricketing experience behind them, to suddenly play in international games because they have to fill a spot, I think is unfair. And asking them to learn their trade at international cricket, I think, is incredibly unfair. There needed to be a feeder system where they got to learn their cricket before they got into those situations, because
Right.
I've seen it where guys have been chosen and just tread water for 3 or 4 months. They get absolutely hammered by the press, and then are swept out again. And who wins from that? It's unfair on the cricketer. It's unfair on cricket. It's unfair to the supporters. So there is a place for it. I just felt like Cricket South Africa got it slightly wrong in the way that they bled these cricketers back into the system.
You sometimes get the perception of South African cricket, partly due to comments in the media from former players, that there is a cohort of white players who fundamentally don't really support transformation targets, and they just kind of think the whole thing's bullshit. And others who have got a more open mind to it, and others who are fervently in support of it. I get the impression from your public commentary before that you've had an open mind to all of this. You haven't fell into the camp of being a sort of a disaffected white South African cricketer. It's not that your starting point on this is that because you were done over, well, to hell with the system. It's harder for you to perhaps grapple with, because your true north is to be supportive of a healthier South Africa than what was the case 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that when I left South Africa to come play over here, to sign permanently here in 2017, and that was the first thing that came up was transformation reasons. He should have gone in the 2015 World Cup. This whatever, and I kept saying to people, I was like, no. And I go back to earlier conversation. I mean, these weeks that we went to at the ages of 13, 15, 19, I'm going back to early 2000, when I was that age, those targets were in place. They just weren't made public. These have been in my career going through South Africa the whole time. And I've never used it as an excuse, because I've always worked hard to get into the team, and I've sacrificed an awful lot. And yeah, so that's really annoyed me. Or that really annoyed me, shall I say, back in 2017, when everyone was like, "Oh, it's because of transformation." I'm like, no, it's never been. I'm now sitting in the South African team at the age of 30, where I should be in my prime as a bowler. I'm not now getting younger, and there's still guys, Dale Steyn, Morne Morkel, Vernon Philander, are still going strong. They are even more in their prime now. They are 33. like they are still going. How much longer do I sit here and tour and carry drinks and get the odd test? I want to play cricket, and I just felt like I hadn't been playing a lot of cricket in that 4 years that spanned over my international career. So yeah, that kind of got me. Then I was like, don't. It's an easy cop out. It's an easy cop out.
And it just doesn't bear out with the facts either, because the reality is you stay around for 2.5 years after that, right? I mean, you play in 2015, you're back in the test team. The aforementioned 5 for 40 in Delhi. There aren't many big strapping fast bowlers who've taken 5 for 40 at Delhi. You're one of them. Then you press fast forward a little bit to when Australia came out for one-day cricket in 2016, and you destroy them and you win 5-0, and you're instrumental to that, leading the South African attack. Sadly, they're your last one-dayers because of what's going on behind the scenes. And I guess we come to the flashpoint of 16-17, that test series in Australia where Steyn gets injured in the first test. Rabada wins it for you in Perth, a staggering individual performance. But then Hobart, I mean, just about the perfect week for South African cricket, going 2-0 up in the series. You pick up 6 for 77 in the second innings. You're virtually unplayable there, as you are in Adelaide the next week as well. I remember doing those tests, and you were just as important as anyone else to South Africa winning that series 2-0. But by that point, you, and only you, knew that was pretty much going to be it. Like, you knew you were going to England in 17. You hadn't announced it, but you'd made the decision that Hampshire was going to be your new home. Talk me through the emotions of being at the absolute peak of your powers as a test bowler, knowing it was pretty much your last stop on that journey.
So it wasn't emotional at all, and it's going to sound strange, but I'll explain why. Because I think it was I was at RPL beginning of 2016, and my agent was over, and I said to him, "This is what I'm thinking of doing in 12 months' time." And he said, "Okay." He said, "How can I help?" I was like, I don't know if you can help right now, but maybe just keep an eye out if anyone's, or ear to the ground, if anyone's potentially looking to sign a Colpack, because Colpack was still around at that time, and I might be interested, but I think this is where I'm going to go. And he said, "Okay." And the weeks went by, months went by, and then we went to the West Indies. I was playing ODI cricket in the West Indies. We actually played Australia in a tri-series there.
That's right, yeah.
And I phoned him from there, and I said, "Listen, bud, cancel that. Don't worry, I'm playing for South Africa." And he goes, "Yeah, right." And I allowed myself almost 12 months to go through these dips and troughs to come out and make the right decision. It wasn't spur of the moment. It wasn't overnight. And it actually wasn't anything emotional. But in that 12 months, all that I noticed was everything looped back to what had happened in the 3 years before. And I was like, it's not changing. It hasn't changed. Like, it's not going to change. And yeah, it was tough, but it also freed me up. And I think that was quite nice to play international cricket with the freedom of knowing, if it doesn't go my way, I've still got something secure in the future. Tipping over on 1-year contracts in international cricket can weigh you down, especially if you're not playing, and then you kind of go play a game and you're like, "Oh, I'm only going to get one game in this series. If we 2-0 up, I might play the third because it's a dead rubber, and I hope I do well." And it was constant. It was constant like that. And I think the freedom in my head of knowing that there was potential in the UK with Hampshire for 3-4 years of security and actually just playing cricket freed me up towards the end of 2016 quite a bit, where perhaps I did peak.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it now in hindsight, Steyn barely plays again. Vernon's finished a couple of years, well, 18 months on from that, Morkel not long after that as well. I mean, there is a world where you could have ended up playing a lot of Test cricket, and at some level you must have been aware of that, but this is the layer that I don't think a lot of people in Australia necessarily appreciate, is that you are paid so much less in South Africa compared to the Aussies and other parts of the world that you had to make a decision about your own resource, right? Your own labour, and playing county cricket was something that was able to safeguard the finances for you and your family for 4 years. It was hard to say no to. It's like similar to how a lot of players go off into the T20 circuit and they go on. I know you did a bit of that, but some players go off and, join the IPL or join another T20 franchise at the expense of red ball cricket. For you, it was just that you could see a world where you could play red ball cricket and be remunerated in a way that gave you some financial security.
Yeah, spot on. At the end of the day, we're a business. We're an individual business looking for opportunities and looking to play money and to get paid money. Sorry, and I know I got hit quite hard and took quite a lot of flack in 2017 about how patriotic I was, and I actually remember driving up Argyle Road in Durban up to my flat just after the news had kind of broke, and the newspaper headlines on the lampposts all the way up Argyle Street was Abbott, hero or villain. And I read the whole way home, and I was like, oh, what is this about? And then I was like, oh, wait, I think don't be stupid. Of course, you know what it's about. And yeah, I think there's a tough one. There's a tough balance between your patriotic fans and your cricket fans. They both have their own view, and they are both totally different. I think majority of cricketing fans and people who understand the game, who understood my career and everything I'd gone through, kind of gave the thumbs up. But the guy around his bra in Pretoria who's never played a game of cricket in his life or never been on a sports field but watches every game and wakes up at 4 a.m. and is the most patriotic guy in the world is going to swear at me and hate me because I've left his country. I've abandoned his country. And he's right too, but just in a very different way. So... yeah,
but it's dramatic as well, isn't it? Because the news breaks in the middle of a test match. So having kept that news, that personal news, to yourself for so long, having been in Australia and had that immense success with the national team, going back to number one in the world, all the rest of it, and it feels like this is going to be your era. Then that dramatic news breaking, you having to do a press conference in your whites to say, "Oh yeah, it's true. I'm leaving. This is it." That must have been a fairly chastening experience. You talk about the newspaper headlines, but just the nature of the questioning and everything getting brought back to transformation, like we talked about before. And even though you've been at peace with the decision internally, having it all amplified the way that it was at the time, that must have been close to the most full-on moment of your career.
Again, a little bit of a relief.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that we played Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was my final test, and I was night watchman on day one, and back in the change room in the shower, and Faf, who was captain at the time, pops his head into the shower. He's like, "Abbott, can you come into the dining room when you finish? I just want to chat." I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I promise you, a minute later, I'm still in the shower, and he's like, "Are you going to hurry up?" I was like, "Sorry, Faf, goodness me, is it that important?" And I walk in, and then it's our team manager, coach. There's about 4 or 5 people around the table. And I sat down, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if this is going to be still a little, no clue really." I thought it might have been a contract meeting of some sort because they were kind of ready for renewal about March. So about 6 weeks before, which I'd had no one had chatted to me, no one had made any a suggestion that I was going to get one or not. And I think that's what I said earlier, these 1-year contracts, you're just ticking over. And then I'm supposed to be at my peak with about 6 weeks to go in a contract and no communication. So there's another little example. But I sat down and it's funny now. But our team manager said, "Right, Cricinfo have contacted us. They've running this story tomorrow. Are you signing for Hampshire for 4 years? This is how much you're getting paid. Do you have any comments? And I said, no. I was like, I don't know what, I was like, I don't know what you want me to say. They're like, is it true? I was like, yeah, it's true. And that was kind of left in a little bit of an awkward situation and carried on. I know Cricket South Africa were a little bit upset about transparency to me. And I know two wrongs don't make a right, but it's a little bit rich coming from them if that's what I was going to get held to at that point, because they weren't very transparent with me. So, but yeah, two wrongs don't make a right. But at that time, it was the best for me. I don't regret it. I've loved every moment here. I've built relationships. I've played a career. You just don't know how it would have ended if I'd stayed. A new coach comes in, he doesn't like me in South Africa. Then that opportunity in the UK is gone. Kolpak finishes. Now you're just an international. Now you're just a domestic bowler from South Africa. You don't play international cricket anymore. These are all things that I kind of had to weigh up and had to take a risk, I guess. But I think it's one that's paid off.
Oh, I mean, in terms of what you've been able to do with Hampshire, even as the Kolpak regulations changed, and look, well, let's just deal with your arrival at Hampshire to begin with, and how successful it was in your first season in 17. Taking 60 wickets at 18, which set you in motion. It feels like you take 60 wickets at 18 every year, Carl, or some version of that analysis that is super consistent, very effective as well. Then in 2019, the stunning 17 for 86 match figures against Somerset, which were the best in a first-class match. Well, the Jim Laker Old Trafford Test of 1956, the 19 for 90, right? So these are huge numbers that you're posting. It's clearly a massive success for Hampshire and your career in the UK. So, I mean, it's working, it's going beautifully. And then there's Brexit. And then, I mean, no such thing as a Kolpak anymore. And theoretically, you can play for South Africa again. I mean, Dwan Olivier and Simon Harmer, and all the chat was that you would do the same. And I know you've played some domestic cricket in South Africa in recent years, but yeah, like, did that ever, when that moment came when it was clear that Brexit was actually going to happen and be legislated, did that thought go through your mind? I'm dominating in England. I'm the best bowler in the country at the moment. Should I try and manage the two things side by side and go and play for the Proteas again?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind. What it would be like to go back and have another crack at it. But I just thought I can't see. I don't see how I win in that situation. There were too many things
right
that just didn't quite sit right with me. And I do remember, I think it might have been when South Africa toured here in a Test series. Was it 20?
They came here last time they were here in 2022.
22, right? Yeah. And someone got injured, and there was talk because Dean Elgar spoke to me and he goes, "Listen, like, potentially we could call you." And I just remember, like, my heart absolutely sunk, and I was like, I'm going to be so rubbish. What if I'm rubbish? And it never materialized. But like, I actually had this fear of going back, something that I've never felt before. And I think that was probably the similar thought that I had once Brexit had gone. It was like, once Brexit had finished, is that was a part of my life. That was a chapter of my life that I loved and I cherished. And that's the story. I'm in the chapter of Hampshire now, and this is a story like it didn't ever really sit well with me going back. And I give the guys full credit who did, Harmy and Doozle, went back and played. Well done to them, brilliant, and they did very well in their time there too, which is a testament to, I think, the standard of English county cricket. I still believe that Division 1 cricket here is some of the toughest in the world, if not the toughest, purely because of the schedule and getting players to turn out week in and week out and build that resilience. But yeah, they did incredibly well, and yeah, it kind of terrified me a little bit to be honest. So yeah, it was never meant to be. But as I said earlier, the way everything's sort of played out here and the success I've had with Hampshire, I wouldn't change the last 7 years for anything.
Something that comes up with a lot of expats, and I sometimes fall into this category. You've got your new home, you've got your old home, and then you sometimes feel like you belong in neither. Because you kind of walk between the raindrops a little bit. Because I'm in my case, I'm never English enough in some respects, and I'm never Australian enough in others. Right? That's just the way things will play out for me. I've lived in the UK for long enough, probably a little bit longer than you have, but so it proves for lots of people with a foot in both camps. I'm interested how that manifests for you. Do you still classify yourself as a proud South African? I mean, I know you did a lot of fundraising during COVID back in South Africa, but how do you sort of reconcile now your South Africanness, having lived away from home for so long?
Well, I was fortunate enough, I guess, is I always had to leave at the end of the season. I always went quite early in October, but I think our visas expired around November. So we only got visas for sort of 7 or 8 months of the year. So,
is that with Colpack? You only got to stay for that amount of time? I didn't realize
even with Colpack, yeah.
Right.
The ECB never allowed us to have any visa longer than 12 months. So, and then when it changed to overseas, same thing. You get a sponsorship number, kind of valid from 1st of March to around end of October. It depending on the embassy. It could have been the 14th of October, could have been the 14th of November, but it was always kind of in that area. So. I was lucky enough to go home every winter. So I was really chasing the summer over the last 7 or 8 years, and that was fantastic. I lived on the beach, fished off my jet ski, caught some yellowfin tuna and dorado, and that went to Kruger Park, and then picked up my training again in the new year, and then would come over and do pre-season. With Hampshire, we got to Spain. We went to Barbados once. We went to Sri Lanka beginning of this year. So yeah, that's kind of how my years were going. But okay. At the moment now, my wife has got settled status. As you said earlier, she's Australian, so she's got settled status here. So I am now on a partner visa. So I've sold up everything in South Africa. We were there over this winter recently, just to wrap up odds and ends with the house. And yeah, so we are permanently here at the moment, potentially with a move to back to her home city of Melbourne. Not too sure when, maybe once our little boy is old enough to really go to school. So, yeah. But yeah, I'd classify myself, still South African. I'm still South African living in the UK. I think that's what. And when I get to Australia, I'll be a South African living in Australia.
Who had an interesting, 10-year detour to England in the middle of all of that. It does beg the question. I mean, I know that. I was told that you made an extra special effort last winter, so I guess before the 24 season, to shed some weight and to get super, super fit. And again, I think you took, I don't know, you'll know what you took, 55 at 20 or something last year. And, was that on your part, realizing that when you get the other side of 35, you've got to be even more ferocious with your fitness to make sure that you can keep up with the young blokes?
So, end of October 22, I had a little bit of cartilage and that taken out of my knee. Nothing serious at all. Just a little clean out on my left knee, on my landing knee. And 2023, I felt awful. Really, really awful. I don't think I was a very pleasant person in 23 either, just because of kind of how I was feeling. And at the end of that, I thought to myself, yeah, I need to give myself the best opportunity here. So I came up with a bit of a strategy with our fitness trainer. I looked at some data, and we cover approximately anything between 30 to 45 kilometers in a 4-day game. That's roughly where we are. So I was like, well, right, I'm going to cover that distance every week in the winter. I'll have a couple of weeks on and a week off. Very slow, plodding, jogging, running, just time on feet. And I'm talking 6.5, 6:45 Ks, sometimes even 7-minute Ks.
Really?
But I was doing that regularly. I was doing it 5 days a week, getting my miles up to sort of anything between 30 and 45 Ks with one speed session in, because the data shows our speed work is actually quite minimal. That only equates to about 4 or 5 Ks or so across the 4 days. We do a lot of standing around, really, and just standing on your feet. So yeah, I did that, and yeah, just try to give myself the knee op was probably a little bit of a kick up the backside I needed. And then yeah, I replicated that again this winter, and I feel good. It still doesn't. I wish it was a shortcut to bowling fitness, but it's still not. Still haven't found one. It's still the only way to get back to bowling fit is to bowl, and that certainly, the running certainly doesn't help that, but it does help with recovery, and just general stiffness. I'm enjoying my time in the field a lot more because I've got that better winter base under me. So yeah, that was kind of the last 2 years and that, but yeah, definitely a shift. And yeah, as you said, getting older, things start to creak and start to ache a little bit more.
So it's back to the same model as the 13-year-old boy, bowling day after day to get the bowling fitness up while you've got the miles in the legs. And nothing really changes too much in this game, does it? Despite how we try and overcomplicate it and sports science and, staying super fit and bowling heaps. I like that you've kept it simple. Do you think you'll keep doing it for, say, I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because you still rack up wickets every week. Like, is it one of those things where you have goals in mind? You've taken 667 first-class wickets, right? So, I mean, theoretically, if you kept playing for a few more years or 6 more years, you could, I don't want to say 1,000. That's probably a little bit out of scope. But, you could take hundreds more first-class wickets if you wish to, if you kept playing, or you could move to Melbourne. Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I suppose that's. Are these the types of things that you now weigh up year to year? Do you have much of a sense of what the finish line is, or do you now just have to be living in the moment a bit more?
No, I think as you get older, I think the planning actually becomes a bit more sort of precise. I think you can kind of live in the moment as a youngster and kind of still sort of redeem yourself if things go wrong and that. But as soon as now, as you start to see the twilight years, I think that the planning becomes more important because you can't kind of restart at my age. So yeah, I am in constant chats with Hampshire. I obviously also don't want to be that guy that they can't get rid of or don't feel like they can get rid of. But as I have said in the last couple of weeks, the investment Hampshire have put into me since 2017, I think is starting to only pay out now. And I'll explain, because the last couple of years bowling with Mohamed Abbas, Keith Barker, there was very little to kind of do. If they had a bad spell, didn't even think about it because they're that good that the next spell would be back on point. And all the younger guys, like use an example like Brad Will and that now, only all they could do was watch from the side, and they've done a lot of watching. But right now, he now gets to play with someone experienced. So there's this yes, there's a time where the old guys do need to move on, but there also needs to be that overlapping that I'll pass the baton on to make sure that Brad Wheel and Sonny Baker and that by the end of this year or by the end of next year, whatever it might be, can run with it and leave that bowling unit in a good place. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. And yeah, to be honest, the stats on that don't really tickle me too much. Yeah, if I think 700 sounds quite nice. So try push towards that. But when you're out in the real world, those numbers, if you've taken 700 or if you've taken 600, I don't think too many people care.
You might have 700 by the end of the month. Who knows? Hampshire playing games back to back. Well, I mean, yeah, it is irrational. It is rational, like you say, about having to prioritise what comes next, and having that role now as the elder statesman of the attack, and ultimately coming back to where we started the conversation, really in this post James Vince era, being a senior player in a dressing room that yet still could enjoy that success that Hampshire have been craving for so long now, having not won the championship for so long. I mean, that must be the overarching lure for you, isn't it? That if you absolutely nail this, you could still be part of a team that wins the thing.
Yeah, that'd be the ultimate send off. But as you said, losing someone like Vincey with 1,000 runs there, and even Mo, unfortunately, that's 50 wickets on that side. But what that does do, it certainly provides opportunities to our youngsters and guys that don't have any really preperception of what this championship's about, and the expectation on them, I don't think they really feel right now, which is quite nice. It's just, well, go and play, which is quite refreshing. As I said earlier, as is our bowling unit, it is refreshing, and we're finding a different way to skin a cat now, especially from the bowling side. But I think as a team as a whole, we're certainly playing some different cricket to what we've done in the last couple of years. So we can only give it a crack.
Well, all that's left for me to say is to wish you extremely well, not just for this week ahead at Trent Bridge, where Hampshire have a chance to push yourself right towards the top of Div 1, but the rest of the season, the rest of the career, the rest of the Kyle Abbott story. It's been a fascinating one, as we've learnt over the last hour and a bit. The things that have happened through the course of your career and your life are unusual, and that you're on the other side of it, still taking wickets week after week, is a testament to the cricketer and the professional that you are. And thanks for sharing all of that with us here on The Final Word.
No, thank you very much, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, there's a few more layers to it, but as I said, I don't think we're going to have enough time or enough podcasts to get through all of it. But really enjoyable. So yeah, thank you very much.